Right now, as you read this, your cat's tail is saying something, not metaphorically, not in the loose, poetic sense that we sometimes use when we talk about animal body language. Literally, specifically, with a precision and a vocabulary that researchers have spent decades trying to fully decode, your cat's tail is communicating position, speed, tension, direction of movement, every variable carrying distinct and readable meaning in a language that has been right in front of you, every single day, for the entire time you have shared your life with this animal. And here is what most cat owners never find out. The things they think they know about what a cat's tail means are, in a significant number of cases, exactly backwards. The wagging tail you assumed meant happiness. The puffed tail you thought was just surprise. The low, slow sweep you read as contentment. The tail wrapped tight around the body that you never thought to read at all. Each of these has a meaning, a real, specific behaviorally grounded meaning, and the gap between what most owners believe they are seeing and what is actually being communicated is wide enough that it changes the entire texture of what has been happening in your interactions with your cat for years. But here's the thing, once you learn to read this correctly, once the tail goes from background noise to foreground signal, you will have access to something extraordinary, a running, real-time, completely honest commentary on your cat's inner state. Available to you every moment your cat is in the room, in a language that, now that you know it exists, you will never be able to stop reading. Stay with me, because the misreading that surprises people most, the one that tends to produce a genuine moment of reckoning when they hear it, is coming, and it is not the one you expect. Let's begin with something structural, because to understand why the tail says what it says, you first have to understand what the tail actually is in the architecture of your cat's body and its social life. The tail of a cat is not an afterthought. It is not decorative. It is not a byproduct of the spine with no function beyond balance. Though balance is part of what it does, the tail is, in the full context of feline biology, one of the most important communication tools the cat possesses. And it evolved to be read at a distance, to broadcast information across space to other cats and to the humans who learned, across thousands of years of cohabitation, to pay attention. A cat's tail contains between 18 and 23 vertebrae depending on the individual animal. It is threaded with nerve endings and controlled by a complex musculature that allows for an extraordinary range of precise independent movement. The cat can move the tip while keeping the base still. It can raise or lower the entire length independently of the rest of its body. It can flick in a single direction with a speed and precision that requires real neuromuscular coordination. Every position, every movement, every tension in the tail is the result of active muscular engagement. Nothing your cat does with its tail is accidental or unconscious in the way that, say, a human's nervous leg bounce might be. What most owners don't realize is that this means every tail signal is intentional, not deliberately performed in the way that a human might compose an expression for social effect, but the product of a specific internal state, expressing itself through a specific physical output, consistently, reliably, in the same way across cats of every breed and every background, because the language is biological rather than learned. Your cat is not choosing to signal you with its tail the way you choose your words, but it is signaling, accurately, and the signal is always true. Something deeper is happening in those tail movements than you have ever been told. Let's start with the one that surprises people most consistently, the one I mentioned at the beginning. The misreading so common and so consequential that correcting it alone changes the daily experience of living with a cat. The wagging tail. When a dog wags its tail, the message is so deeply embedded in popular culture that it has become shorthand for happiness itself. Wagging means joy. Wagging means friendly. Wagging means come closer. Everything is good here. We have been reading tail wagging as positive signal since childhood, from every dog we have ever known, from every story and film and image that has ever shown us a tail moving back and forth. And so, when a cat's tail moves, when it sweeps or flicks or lashes from side to side, many owners make the same assumption. The cat is happy. The cat is excited. The cat is enjoying whatever is currently happening and expressing that enjoyment in the only way a tail knows how. But here is what is actually happening when your cat's tail moves. In cat's tail movement, particularly the lateral sweep, the flick, the lash, is almost universally a signal of arousal, and not the comfortable, contented kind of arousal, the kind that sits on the spectrum between mild irritation and significant agitation, the kind that means something in the cat's current experience has exceeded its comfort threshold, and its body is responding with increased activation. A slow, single flick of the tail tip, That subtle, almost lazy movement at the very end of an otherwise still tail is the mildest version. It appears when something has caught the cat's attention in a way it isn't sure how to categorize, when a sound registered that it hasn't identified yet, when something in the environment has shifted just enough to bring it out of full relaxation without fully activating it. It is the tail equivalent of a raised eyebrow. Not alarm, but not peace either. A faster, more rhythmic side-to-side movement, particularly if it involves more of the tail rather than just the tip, sits further along the arousal spectrum. This is the signal that appears when your cat is actively conflicted, when it is being petted past the point of comfort, when it wants to leave an interaction but hasn't decided to yet, when the stimulation of play has crossed the line from engaging into overwhelming, when something is happening that it tolerates but does not fully welcome, and the full lash, the rapid, wide, full tail sweep that involves the entire length of the tail with real force, is the clearest signal your cat possesses for the outer edge of its tolerance. This is not happiness. This is the last visible warning before a scratch or a bite that many owners, bewilderingly, never see coming. Because they misread the tail. This is where it gets interesting. Because the research on feline-human conflict, on the bites and scratches that owners describe as coming out of nowhere, almost always tells the same story when examined carefully. The tail was speaking, loudly, clearly, in the only language available to it, and the owner, who had learned from a lifetime of dogs that a moving tail meant something good, simply didn't know how to hear it. Now let's talk about what a genuinely happy cat's tail looks like. Because the signal exists, it is beautiful and unmistakable once you know it, and most people have seen it 1,000 times without knowing what they were seeing. A cat that is feeling confident, content, and happy to see you carries its tail vertically, straight up like an antenna, pointing toward the ceiling. Sometimes with a slight curve or hook at the very tip, a comma shape, or a question mark that appears specifically in the context of social approach toward a being the cat is happy to encounter. This tail-up posture has been studied extensively in feline social behavior research, and its meaning is consistent across virtually every cat that has been observed. It evolved, researchers believe, as a display rooted in kitten behavior. Very young kittens raise their tails when their mother approaches them, an invitation for her to sniff and groom the anogenital area, which she must stimulate for them to eliminate in those early weeks. Over time, as cats develop more complex social lives, this tail-up signal became generalized into a broader greeting behavior, a display of openness, of approach willingness, of positive social intention toward another being. When your cat walks toward you with its tail straight up, it is doing something that carries the deepest evolutionary roots of social welcome that its behavioral repertoire contains. It is saying, in a language older than any word, older than any sound, "I am glad you are here. I am coming toward you freely." This approach is a good thing. What most owners don't realize is that they can respond to this signal in kind. A hand extended at the cat's level, offered rather than reached, mirrors the social openness of the tail-up approach in a way that cats recognize and respond to with measurably greater affiliation. You are answering the greeting in its own language, and the cat, which has been watching for exactly this kind of response, feels something it can only describe with a slow blink and a continued forward approach. You have been receiving this greeting every single day. Now you know what it has always meant. Let's move to something subtler, something that plays out in the quiet, stationary moments. Your cat sitting nearby, apparently at rest, and that carries a meaning most owners never think to read because the tail barely seems to be doing anything at all. The tail wrapped around the body. Your cat is sitting in a loaf position, front paws tucked, body settled, eyes half closed, and its tail is curled around its own body, tucked neatly at its side or wrapped across its front paws. Most people read this as neutral, as a cat that is simply sitting, a body at rest, with a tail that has nowhere else to be. But here is what that tail position is actually communicating. A cat that wraps its tail tightly around its own body is in a state of self-containment. It is pulling its extremities in, reducing its physical footprint in the world, creating a closed posture that signals to other cats and to careful humans that it is not inviting approach, not that it is afraid necessarily, not that it is in distress, but that it is in a withdrawn, self-sufficient mode that does not currently have room for interaction. Compare this to the cat that sits in the same loaf position but with its tail extended loosely, resting at ease along the floor beside it. Same outward stillness, completely different internal state. The open tail is a cat at rest that has no particular need to protect its own space. Comfortable, available, not closed against the possibility of interaction. These two postures look almost identical to most owners. The only difference is the tail. and the difference in meaning is significant enough that approaching the first cat, uninvited, tends to produce irritation, while approaching the second tends to produce welcome. The tail was telling you, the whole time, which one it was. And this is where the story opens into something I find genuinely extraordinary about the tail as a communication system. Because everything we have talked about so far, the lash, the tail-up greeting, the wrapped self-containment, these are signals directed outward, communications intended for the world around the cat. But there is one tail, behavior that is different from all of these. One movement that is not primarily a social signal at all, that exists in a category of its own, and that, when you understand it, reveals something about the depth of your cat's inner life that is easy to underestimate. The slow, gentle wag of the tail during deep sleep. You have seen this? Your cat, fully asleep, breathing slowly, completely unconscious, and the tail moving, just slightly. A gentle, unhurried sweep, or a slow curl and uncurl, happening without any apparent stimulus, without any external trigger, arising seemingly from nowhere. Most people smile at this and move on, assume the cat is dreaming, which is, as it happens, exactly right. Cats do dream. This has been confirmed through EEG studies of feline sleep patterns that show clear REM sleep phases, the stage of sleep most associated with dreaming in humans, accompanied by the small, involuntary muscular movements that suggest active internal experience. The twitching paws, the flickering whiskers, the subtle facial movements, and yes, the slow, gentle movement of the tail. What most owners don't realize is that they are watching their cat live through something, an experience internal, private, inaccessible, but real. The tail, even in unconsciousness, continues its ancient work of translating internal state into external signal. It cannot help it. It is built that way. And what it signals in those moments is the most unguarded truth available, not performed for any audience, not shaped by any social context, just whatever is happening in the dreaming mind of your cat, expressed in the only language its body knows. You will never know what your cat dreams, but you can watch its tail tell the truth about the fact that something is happening in there, something felt, something experienced, a rich, private, interior life that carries on even when the eyes are closed and the world has gone away. Something deeper is happening inside your sleeping cat than most of us ever take seriously. So let's bring this all the way forward, to this moment, to your cat wherever it is right now, across the room or beside you or curled at the foot of the bed, and its tail, which has been speaking continuously and consistently since the day you brought it home. Think about all the mornings you saw that tail go straight up as your cat came toward you and felt it as a generic good morning rather than a specific, biologically rooted declaration of social joy directed at you personally. Think about all the petting sessions where the tail began its slow, rhythmic sweep and you continued, not knowing it was asking you, clearly and kindly, to stop. Think about all the moments the tail was wrapped tight and closed and you reached anyway, confused, when the interaction didn't land the way you hoped. None of that was your fault. You were never taught the language. Almost no one is. It is one of the great quiet gaps in what we give. Cat owners. The actual vocabulary of the animal they are living with, speaking fluently every day, but you have it now, or the beginning of it at least. The tail-up greeting that means genuine happiness. The lashing tail that means stop before this goes wrong. The slow morning flick that means something caught my attention and I haven't decided what to do about it yet. The wrapped posture that means I am not open right now, not a rejection, just a boundary worth respecting. Your cat has been a completely open book this entire time, written in a language you simply hadn't been given the key to. Now you have the key. And the book, it turns out, has been describing something remarkable all along. A creature with an extraordinarily complex, nuanced, continuously expressed inner life, lived right beside you, in full signal, every day, asking to be read, waiting to be understood, sending the same messages, in the same language, with the same patient consistency that it has brought to everything it has ever tried to tell you. Read it. Starting today, starting right now, with whatever the tail is doing at this exact moment, because your cat has been waiting a very long time for you to finally understand what it has always been saying. If this story gave you a completely new way of reading your cat every day, share it with someone whose cat has been trying to tell them something they couldn't hear. And if you want to keep learning the full hidden language of cats, stay right here. There's always more to discover.